The lunch crowd at Rosa's Family Bistro filled the air with chatter and the clink of silverware against plates. Emma Rodriguez, a 4-year-old with pigtails tied in bright yellow ribbons, swung her legs beneath the booth, while her mother Maria studied the menu. Sunlight streamed through the front windows, casting warm patches across the checkered tablecloth. At a table near the kitchen door, Officer Sarah Chen sat with her K-9 partner, Max, a 7-year-old German shepherd with alert brown eyes and a black saddle across his tan coat. They'd stopped for a quick lunch during patrol, Max resting quietly at her feet while she scrolled through incident reports on her phone. The restaurant was one of their regular spots, a family-owned place that had served the Riverside neighborhood for 15 years. Max's ears suddenly snapped forward. His nose twitched. Something in the air had changed. Sarah glanced down. Max's body had gone rigid, his attention locked on something across the dining room. She followed his gaze to the corner booth where a young mother and her daughter waited for their food. Nothing seemed unusual. The little girl played with a stuffed bunny while her mother sipped water and checked her phone. Max stood. His hackles rose along his spine. "Easy, boy," Sarah murmured, her hand moving to his collar. But Max pulled against her grip, his nose working the air in rapid bursts. She'd worked with him for 5 years, through narcotics busts and search and rescue operations. She'd learned to trust his instincts even when her own eyes saw nothing wrong. The server appeared at the Rodriguez table, balancing 2 plates. Chicken tenders and fries for the little girl, a Caesar salad for her mother. Max lunged forward, barking. The sound cut through the restaurant chatter like a knife. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. "Max, heel!" Sarah commanded. But the dog ignored her, something he'd never done before. He strained toward the mother and daughter, his bark escalating to a frantic pitch that echoed off the walls. Maria Rodriguez pulled Emma close, her eyes wide with fear. Emma's bunny fell to the floor as she wrapped her small arms around her mother's neck. Sarah's training kicked in. She released Max's collar and followed as he bolted across the restaurant. He didn't attack or threaten. Instead, he planted himself between the table and the plates of food, barking at the chicken tenders with an intensity that made Sarah's heart pound. "I'm so sorry," Sarah called to the terrified mother. "He's never done anything like this. Please don't touch that food." Max's nose hovered inches above Emma's plate. His body trembled, every muscle tensed. Sarah had seen him alert to drugs, explosives, even cadavers during training. This was different. This was desperate. The server, a young man named Danny, backed away from the table. "Is something wrong with the food? I just brought it from the kitchen. Chef Tony made it fresh." Sarah knelt beside Max, placing her hand on his shoulder. His nose worked frantically over the plate, taking rapid, shallow breaths. She'd read the studies. German shepherds had 225 million scent receptors. They could detect chemical compounds invisible to humans. Max was trying to tell her something. "Could you bring me the manager, please?" Sarah asked, her voice calm but firm. "And don't serve any more food from the kitchen until I can figure out what's happening here." Danny hesitated, looking between the dog and the plate. "Chef Tony's going to be upset. We've got a full house." "Now, please." The young server hurried towards the kitchen. Maria Rodriguez clutched Emma tighter. The little girl had started to cry, soft, hiccuping sobs against her mother's shoulder. Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed the station. "This is Officer Chen, badge number 4127. I need a health inspector at Rosa's Family Bistro on Riverside Avenue immediately. My K-9 is alerting to possible contamination in the food, also requesting backup." Max's barking had dropped to a low, continuous growl. His eyes never left the plate. Whatever he smelled, it was still there. The manager emerged from the kitchen, a middle-aged woman named Rita, who'd owned Rosa's since her mother retired. Her face showed confusion, mixed with concern. "Officer Chen, what's going on?" Danny said something about contaminated food, but that's impossible. We follow every health code. We've never had a violation. I believe you, Sarah said. But my dog is trained to detect chemical compounds. He's alerting to something in that food. She gestured to Emma's untouched plate. I need you to keep everyone out of the kitchen until the health inspector arrives. Rita's face paled. Chemical compounds? Like what? We don't use anything unusual in our cooking. I don't know yet, but this dog has a better nose than any equipment you own. If he says something's wrong, something's wrong. Max shifted his attention from the food to the kitchen door. His growl deepened. Sarah felt ice forming in her stomach. Max wasn't just alerting to the food anymore. He was alerting to the source. Sirens wailed in the distance. 2 patrol cars pulled up outside within minutes, followed by a white van marked Environmental Health Department. Inspector James Bradley, a thin man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses, entered carrying a metal case. Officer Chen, he greeted. Your call said possible chemical contamination? My K-9 alerted. He's trained for narcotics primarily, but he responds to a range of chemical compounds. She pointed to the untouched plates. He went ballistic when the server brought this food out. Bradley set his case on an empty table and pulled on latex gloves. He removed a small electronic device, something Sarah recognized as a portable spectrometer. Let's see what we're dealing with. He waved the device over Emma's plate. Numbers scrolled across a small screen. His expression changed. We've got elevated levels of something here, not normal for food. He took a sample of the chicken, sealing it in a clear tube. I need to run this through the lab, but your dog might have just saved these people. Maria Rodriguez had remained silent, her hand pressed to Emma's back. Now her voice trembled. What kind of chemical? Is my daughter in danger? We were about to eat this. You didn't consume any of it? Bradley asked. No, the dog started barking the second it arrived at our table. Relief flickered across the inspector's face. Then you're both fine, but if you'd eaten this… He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Sarah felt Max tug toward the kitchen again. The dog's persistence hadn't wavered. If anything, his agitation had increased. Inspector, I think we need to check the kitchen. Max is pulling that direction. Bradley nodded. Officer Chen, would you and your dog accompany me? Rita, I need access to everything back there. Storage, prep areas, cleaning supplies. The kitchen stretched long and narrow, stainless steel surfaces gleaming under fluorescent lights. 2 cooks worked the line while a dishwasher scrubbed pots in the far corner. Chef Tony, a heavy-set man in his 40s with a white apron, looked up from the grill. What's going on? Rita said you're… Shutting down my kitchen? Routine inspection, Bradley said smoothly. Please step away from your stations. Everyone out front. Max didn't wait. He pulled Sarah past the grill, past the prep tables, straight to a storage area in the back corner. Metal shelving units held dry goods, canned vegetables, industrial-sized containers of oil and vinegar. Max's nose swept across the lower shelves, then locked onto a gray plastic bin shoved behind boxes of pasta. His barking erupted again, sharp and insistent. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her weapon. What's in that container? She asked Chef Tony. The chef's face had gone white. That's just cleaning supplies, salt for the water softener. Bradley pulled the bin forward. Inside, clear plastic bags filled with white crystalline powder sat stacked 3 deep. He opened his case again, this time pulling out test strips. He dipped one in a small sample. The strip turned bright blue. That's not salt, Bradley said quietly. Officer, I think you need to call for narcotics detectives. Max sat, his alert complete. His tail wagged once, a small movement of satisfaction. He'd done his job. Sarah's radio crackled to life. She stepped into the dining room, her mind racing. A narcotics stash in a restaurant kitchen. But Max hadn't alerted to the drugs themselves. He'd alerted to the food. That meant contamination wasn't accidental. Detective Marcus Williams arrived 30 minutes later with 2 members of the narcotics unit. They cleared the kitchen, photographed the drugs, and began questioning the staff one by one. Sarah stayed with Max in the dining room, where other officers had taken statements from customers. Emma Rodriguez sat on a chair near the front window, coloring in a book one of the officers had found in their patrol car. Maria stood nearby, her arms crossed tight across her chest. "Your dog saved my daughter's life," Maria said when Sarah approached, her voice cracked. "If he hadn't barked, if we'd eaten even one bite." "Max was doing his job," Sarah said, but her own hands trembled slightly. How close had it been? Minutes, seconds, maybe. Detective Williams emerged from the kitchen, his expression grim. He gestured for Sarah to join him near the front counter, out of earshot from the customers. "Your dog found something bigger than we expected," he said. "We've been tracking a distribution network operating out of several cash-intensive businesses in this neighborhood. Restaurants, laundromats, car washes. They've been laundering drug money through legitimate receipts." "That explains the stash," Sarah said. "But what about the contamination in the food?" "We found residue on the prep surfaces. Looks like whoever was handling the drugs wasn't being careful about cross-contamination. He paused. Or they were using the food prep area to cut and package the product." Sarah felt sick. They were processing drugs on the same surfaces they used to prepare food for children. "We're bringing in a hazmat team to test everything." The health inspector shut them down immediately. "But Officer Chen, your dog's nose caught this before anyone got seriously ill, before a kid ingested methamphetamine." Max sat at Sarah's feet, watching her with those intelligent brown eyes. She reached down to scratch behind his ears. 5 years they'd worked together, hundreds of calls, but this one would stay with her. The investigation expanded over the following hours. Chef Tony and 2 other kitchen workers were arrested. A 3rd employee, Danny the young server who'd brought the contaminated food to Emma's table, was questioned but released. He'd known nothing about what was happening in the kitchen after hours. Detective Williams pulled Sarah aside as forensics teams combed through every inch of the restaurant. "We've been tracking a distribution network operating out of several cash-intensive businesses in this neighborhood for 8 months. Your dog just broke the case wide open." "How deep does this go?" Sarah asked, watching as evidence technicians bagged samples from every surface in the kitchen. "Deep enough that we've got federal agents on their way. The DEA has been monitoring financial transactions tied to this restaurant for weeks. They suspected money laundering but couldn't get enough evidence for a warrant. Your K-9's alert gave us probable cause." Max sat at Sarah's feet, watching the activity with calm interest. He'd done his part. Now the humans took over. "They were mixing dirty money with legitimate restaurant receipts," Williams continued, "taking cash from drug sales, depositing it with the day's restaurant earnings. Made it look like the business was doing better than it actually was. Rita's been filing tax returns showing profits 3 times higher than what the restaurant actually earned." "She didn't know?" "We don't think so. Chef Tony had access to the books. He'd been manipulating the numbers for years. Rita trusted him completely, gave him keys, let him close up at night, never questioned the financial reports he prepared." Williams shook his head. "But they got sloppy. Started using the kitchen late at night to cut product. Traces of methamphetamine got onto the prep surfaces, the cutting boards, the utensils." Sarah felt sick. "They were processing drugs on the same equipment they used to prepare food for children." "Exactly. We found residue on 3 cutting boards, 2 prep tables, and the commercial mixer. Looks like they'd been at it for at least 6 weeks. Maybe longer." The full scope of the contamination emerged slowly. Health inspectors wearing hazmat suits took samples from every piece of equipment, every utensil, every dish in the restaurant. They tested leftover food from the walk-in refrigerator. They swabbed surfaces that looked clean to the human eye, but might harbor invisible traces of deadly chemicals. Sarah thought of all the families who'd eaten at Rosa's over the past weeks. How many had consumed trace amounts without knowing? How many children had eaten chicken tenders just like Emma's? How many had gotten sick and blamed it on a stomach bug or food allergies? The health department posted a closure notice on the front door. Customers who'd eaten at the restaurant in the past month were advised to contact their doctors if they'd experienced any unusual symptoms. A hotline was established. Within hours, calls flooded in. Parents described children with unexplained fevers, nausea that lasted days, mysterious rashes that doctors couldn't diagnose. Rita, the manager and owner, sat on a bench outside, her head in her hands. She'd known nothing about what was happening in her kitchen after hours. The betrayal of her own chef, a man she'd employed for 8 years, had left her shattered. "My mother started this restaurant 40 years ago," she told Sarah, her voice hollow. "She used her life savings, built it from nothing, and now this." Fresh tears streamed down her face. "How could I have been so blind? How could I not have seen what was happening in my own kitchen?" "You trusted someone you shouldn't have," Sarah said gently. "That's not the same as being complicit." "But children got sick. Families trusted us to feed them safely, and we poisoned them." Rita looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "How do I come back from that? How do I ever look my neighbors in the face again?" Sarah didn't have an answer. Some betrayals cut too deep for easy forgiveness. Detective Williams emerged from the kitchen with a thick manila folder. "We found financial records hidden in the office, ledgers tracking drug sales alongside restaurant receipts. Chef Tony wasn't just cooking in this kitchen. He was running a distribution hub. We're estimating they moved over $2 million in product through here in the past year." $2 million? Rita's voice cracked. "That's not possible. Our annual revenue is barely $300,000. "Your legitimate revenue is $300,000. But they were reporting much higher numbers to the IRS, using the fake receipts to justify the deposits. Classic money laundering operation." Federal agents arrived an hour later. DEA, FBI, Treasury Department investigators who specialized in financial crimes. The scope of the investigation expanded beyond the single restaurant to encompass a network of businesses across 3 states. Chef Tony had been part of a larger organization, one that used family restaurants, laundromats, and auto repair shops to hide millions in drug profits. Sarah and Max stayed at the scene until after midnight, providing statements and coordinating with the other agencies. Max remained alert and professional throughout, though Sarah could tell he was tired. His ears drooped slightly, and he yawned twice when no one was looking. "You did good today, boy," she murmured, scratching behind his ears during a quiet moment. "You did so good." Max's tail wagged weakly. He pressed against her leg, seeking comfort and reassurance. The media descended by morning. News vans lined the street outside Rosa's Bistro. Reporters interviewed neighbors, filmed the closed restaurant, and ran stories about the German Shepherd who'd detected poison in food meant for a child. Sarah's phone rang constantly. Her captain called. The chief called. The mayor's office called. Everyone wanted to know about Max, about how he'd known, about what his alert had prevented. Sarah gave one brief statement to the press, standing outside the station with Max at her side. She kept it simple, professional. Max had been trained to detect chemical compounds. He'd alerted to contamination in the food. His training had saved lives. But the reporters wanted more. They wanted drama. They wanted to know if Max was a hero, if he'd known he was saving a child, if he understood the magnitude of what he'd done. "Max is a working K-9, Sarah said firmly. "He did what he was trained to do. He detected a threat and alerted to it. That's his job." Still, the story spread. Local news, national news. Within 3 days, Max's picture appeared in newspapers across the country. The German shepherd who saved a little girl. Police dog uncovers major drug ring. Canine's nose prevents tragedy. Emma's face never appeared in the media. Maria had refused all interview requests, wanting to protect her daughter from the spotlight. But Sarah knew the family was watching the coverage. Maria sent a text 2 days after the incident. Emma saw Max on TV. She's very proud of her hero. As the sun began to set, Emma and Maria Rodriguez prepared to leave. Emma had stopped crying hours ago and now clutched a Rosa's Bistro coloring book one of the officers had found. She walked over to where Max sat beside Sarah's patrol car. "Can I pet him?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Of course," Sarah smiled. "He's very gentle when he's not working." Emma's small hand touched Max's head. The big dog remained perfectly still, his tail wagging slowly. "Thank you for saving me," Emma whispered. Max's tail wagged harder. Maria Rodriguez's eyes filled with tears. "We came here for lunch because Emma loves their chicken tenders. It's her favorite. If your dog hadn't been here, if he hadn't smelled whatever was wrong—" She couldn't finish. Sarah understood. The what-ifs would haunt this family for a while, but Max had changed the outcome. That's what mattered. "He's trained to protect," Sarah said. "That's what he does." "He's a hero," Maria said firmly, "a real hero." Later that evening, Sarah sat in the parking lot of the police station with Max in the back seat. Her shift had ended hours ago, but she couldn't quite bring herself to drive home yet. The adrenaline from the day had faded, leaving her exhausted and strangely emotional. Captain Rodriguez, no relation to the family from the restaurant, had called to commend both her and Max. The mayor's office wanted to do a press conference. The local news stations were already running stories about the K9 who'd detected poison in restaurant food. But Sarah kept thinking about that moment when Max had first alerted. The split second when he'd gone rigid, when his instincts had overridden his training to stay calm in public. How many people walked past danger every day without knowing? How many threats went undetected because humans couldn't smell what dogs could? Max whined softly from the back seat. Sarah turned to look at him. He'd been lying down, but now he sat up, his head tilted in concern. "I'm okay, boy," she said. "Just thinking." Max pushed his nose through the divider, touching her shoulder. "You did good today," Sarah told him. "You did so good." The investigation continued over the following weeks. Detective Williams and his team dismantled the entire drug distribution network. 7 people were arrested in the initial sweep. Within a month, that number grew to 23, spanning operations in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. The network had been laundering an estimated $15 million annually through seemingly legitimate businesses. Health inspectors tested samples from the restaurant's recent dishes. They found contamination in approximately 15% of the food served over a 2-week period. Most concentrations were low enough that they might have caused mild symptoms like nausea or dizziness, symptoms that customers probably attributed to a stomach bug. But Emma's chicken tenders had tested positive for levels high enough to cause seizures or cardiac arrest in a small child. The toxicology reports made national news. Pediatricians across the region reported seeing patients whose symptoms matched low-level methamphetamine exposure. Children who'd been diagnosed with mysterious stomach flu. Kids who'd experienced unexplained fevers or racing heartbeats. Parents who'd blamed bad batches of chicken or their child's sensitive stomach. Now they knew the truth. Their children had been poisoned. Sarah received dozens of letters from families thanking Max for his work. Parents who'd eaten at Rosa's wrote to say their children had experienced symptoms, but recovered. Others wrote to say they'd planned to eat there, but had chosen a different restaurant at the last minute. All of them expressed gratitude that Max's alert had shut down the operation before more damage was done. One letter particularly moved Sarah. It came from a woman whose 8-year-old son had eaten at Rosa's 3 times in the 2 weeks before the restaurant closed. The boy had developed severe stomach problems, spending 5 days in the hospital while doctors ran tests. They'd found nothing conclusive and sent him home with medication for acid reflux. After the news broke about the contamination, the family had the boy retested. Traces of methamphetamine appeared in his hair follicles, evidence of exposure weeks earlier. The doctors confirmed he'd been poisoned. The mother's letter thanked Max for preventing other children from suffering the same fate. Sarah kept that letter in her locker at the station. On difficult days, when the work felt overwhelming or the results disappointing, she'd read it and remember why they did this, why she and Max put on the uniform every day and faced whatever dangers came their way. The case made national news. German Shepherd saves child from poisoned food. Police dog's nose uncovers major drug ring. The stories highlighted Max's exceptional scent detection abilities and the critical importance of canine units in law enforcement. But for Sarah, the recognition meant less than the moment 3 weeks later when she saw Maria and Emma Rodriguez at the grocery store. Emma spotted Max first. She tugged on her mother's sleeve and pointed. Maria turned, her face breaking into a smile. "Officer Chen," she called, weaving through shoppers to reach them. Max's tail began wagging before they were halfway across the store. He recognized them too. Emma knelt in front of the dog, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Max stood perfectly still, accepting the hug with patient dignity. His tail continued its steady rhythm. "We've been hoping to run into you," Maria said. "I wanted to thank you again, properly." She handed Sarah a small gift bag. "It's not much, but—" Inside, Sarah found a framed photograph. It showed Emma sitting next to Max in the restaurant parking lot, both of them looking at the camera. Emma was smiling, her earlier tears forgotten. Max's expression was alert, professional, but his eyes held something gentle. "I took this right before we left that day," Maria explained. "I wanted Emma to remember the dog who saved her life." "We put it in her room," Emma added, "next to my bed so I can see it every night." Sarah's throat tightened. "Thank you. This means a lot." "You both mean a lot to us," Maria said. "I don't like to think about what could have happened, but I'm grateful every single day that Max was there." Emma stood up, but kept one hand on Max's head. "Mommy says he's the best dog in the whole world." "He is," Sarah agreed. "The very best." They talked for a few more minutes. Maria mentioned that Emma's nightmares about the restaurant had finally stopped. She'd been seeing a child therapist who specialized in trauma, and the sessions were helping. Emma was eating normally again, her appetite fully recovered. "She asks to go visit Max sometimes," Maria said with a small laugh. "I tell her police dogs are very busy." "Actually," Sarah said, surprising herself, "we do public demonstrations sometimes, canine training sessions for schools and community groups. I could arrange for Emma to come watch Max work, if you'd like." Emma's face lit up. "Really? I could see Max again?" "Really," Sarah confirmed. "I'll talk to my captain and send your mom the details." After they parted ways, Sarah stood in the grocery store aisle for a moment, the photograph still in her hands. Max sat beside her, patient as always. She looked down at him. "You know what you did, don't you?" she said quietly. "You knew exactly what was at stake." Max's ears perked forward. His dark eyes met hers with that intelligent, knowing gaze she'd come to trust completely. They'd been partners for 5 years. They'd tracked criminals through dark alleys and searched collapsed buildings for survivors. They'd found evidence that solved cases and brought closure to families. But today, this case, this little girl named Emma, who could have died from eating contaminated chicken tenders at her favorite restaurant, this would always be the one Sarah remembered. This was why they did the work. This was why Max trained until his paws were sore and his muscles ached. This was why Sarah woke up at 5 in the morning to run drills and practice scent detection. For moments like the one in Rosa's family bistro, when a dog's nose could mean the difference between life and death. The K9 demonstration took place 3 weeks later at the community center. 20 children and their parents filled the gymnasium to watch Max and 3 other police dogs demonstrate their skills. They ran obstacle courses, responded to commands, and showed how they alerted to hidden objects. Emma Rodriguez sat in the front row, bouncing with excitement. When Sarah called Max over to demonstrate scent detection, Emma's eyes went wide. Sarah placed 3 identical boxes on the floor. One contained a small amount of training scent. The others were empty. Max circled the boxes, his nose working methodically. When he reached the correct box, he sat immediately, his alert clear and unmistakable. The children clapped. Emma clapped the loudest. After the demonstration, Sarah brought Max over to where Emma and Maria waited. The little girl had brought something, a drawing she'd made at school. It showed a large brown and black dog standing next to a small girl. Above them, she'd written in careful letters, "Max the hero dog." "This is for you," Emma said shyly, holding out the drawing. Sarah took it, her eyes stinging. "Thank you, Emma. I'm going to hang this up at the station where everyone can see it. Will you tell them Max saved me? I will tell them that Max is the bravest, smartest dog I've ever known, and that he has a very special friend named Emma who thinks he's a hero." Emma beamed. She knelt down to hug Max one more time. The big German shepherd accepted the embrace with his usual patience, his tail wagging steadily. When Emma stepped back, he licked her hand once, gentle and deliberate. Maria Rodriguez wiped her eyes. "Thank you for this. For letting Emma see him again. It's helped her so much." "It's helped us too," Sarah said honestly. "Max and we needed to see that our work matters, that we made a difference." "You made all the difference," Maria said firmly. "All the difference in the world." The evening sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Sarah loaded Max into their patrol car. Another shift was ending. Tomorrow would bring new calls, new challenges, new chances to serve and protect. But tonight, Sarah drove home with Emma's drawing on the seat beside her and the image of Max's steady gaze fixed in her mind. She thought about how close they'd come to tragedy, how a little girl with yellow ribbons in her pigtails had almost eaten food laced with methamphetamine, how a mother had almost lost her daughter. And she thought about Max, sitting in the back seat now, his work done for the day. He'd alerted to danger because that's what he was trained to do. He'd barked when his instincts told him something was wrong, even though it meant breaking protocol. He'd trusted his nose, his senses, the abilities that German shepherds had evolved over generations. 225 million scent receptors. That's what the study said. But Sarah knew it was more than biology. It was dedication, intelligence, courage, all the things that made Max not just a good K9, but an exceptional one. 3 months after the incident at Rosa's Bistro, the restaurant reopened under new management. Rita had sold the business to a young couple who'd renamed it Sunrise Cafe. They'd gutted the kitchen, replaced every surface, installed new equipment, and hired an entirely new staff. The health inspector had given them a perfect score. Sarah and Max stopped by on their first day open. Rita was there, helping the new owners with the lunch rush. She saw Sarah and Max through the window and came outside. "Officer Chen," she said warmly, "I was hoping you'd come by." "How are you doing?" Sarah asked. "Better. It's been hard, losing the restaurant my mother built, but the new owners are good people, and this neighborhood needs a place where families can eat safely." Her expression turned serious. "I wanted to thank you, and Max, for catching what was happening before more people got hurt." "We were just doing our job." "Maybe, But you saved lives doing it. Rita reached down to pet Max. Including that little girl with the pigtails. I heard she comes to your demonstrations now. Sarah smiled. Emma Rodriguez. She's one of Max's biggest fans. As she should be. He's earned it. They talked for a few more minutes before Sarah and Max continued their patrol. As they walked down Riverside Avenue, passing shops and restaurants and the regular flow of neighborhood life, Sarah felt a sense of contentment. The work they did mattered. The training, the long hours, the constant vigilance, all of it served a purpose. Max walked beside her, his stride confident and sure. He'd alerted to danger. He'd protected the innocent. He'd done what German Shepherds had been bred to do for over a century: serve, protect, and use their extraordinary abilities to keep people safe. That evening, back at the station, Sarah hung Emma's drawing on the bulletin board in the K-9 unit office. Several other officers stopped to look at it, to read the words, "Max the Hero Dog," written in a child's careful script. Captain Rodriguez came over to admire it. That's the Rodriguez girl from the restaurant case? Emma. She's doing well. No lasting effects from the exposure. Thanks to Max's nose. The captain looked at the German shepherd lying in his bed in the corner. He's a hell of a dog, Chen. The best partner I've ever had. The mayor's office called again. They want to do a commendation ceremony. Medal of Valor for Max. Sarah glanced at her dog. He'd fallen asleep, his legs twitching slightly as he dreamed. He'd probably prefer a steak dinner. The captain laughed. Probably, but he's getting both. The ceremony took place the following month at City Hall. Max received a Medal of Valor, the first K-9 in the department's history to earn the distinction. Emma Rodriguez and her mother attended, sitting in the front row as the mayor pinned the medal to Max's collar. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions. Max sat perfectly still through all of it, as patient and professional as always. But when the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, Max's attention turned immediately to Emma. His tail wagged as the little girl approached. She carried a gift, a stuffed German shepherd dog that looked remarkably like Max. I wanted you to have this, Emma told Sarah, so Max has a friend for when he's resting. Sarah accepted the gift, her heart full. Thank you, Emma. Max will love it. Emma knelt in front of the real Max, placing her small hands on either side of his face. You're the best dog ever, she whispered, and I'm never going to forget what you did. Max licked her nose, making her giggle. Maria Rodriguez stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. Sarah understood. Some moments transcended words. Some bonds couldn't be explained, only felt. As the sun set over the city that evening, Sarah sat in the station parking lot with Max in the back seat. The stuffed German shepherd sat on the dashboard. Emma's drawing hung in the K-9 office. The Medal of Valor had been photographed and filed away in Max's service record. But the real reward, Sarah thought, had been seeing Emma's smile. Knowing that a little girl who'd come so close to tragedy was safe, healthy, and happy. That was worth more than any medal. Max whined softly. Sarah turned to look at him. He was watching her with those intelligent brown eyes, his head tilted slightly. You know you're a hero, right? She asked him. Max's tail wagged, just once, as if to say, I know, but I was just doing my job. And maybe that was the truth. Maybe Max didn't think of himself as a hero. He was a K-9, trained to detect threats and protect people. He'd smelled something wrong and alerted to it, simple, straightforward. But the impact of that alert, the lives changed and potentially saved, that rippled outward in ways Max could never understand. Emma would grow up. She'd tell her own children about the police dog who'd saved her life. She'd remember that dogs weren't just pets, they were protectors, partners, heroes in fur coats, and Max would continue to serve. There would be more calls, more cases, More moments when his nose detected what human senses missed. He'd keep working until his body grew too old and his retirement came. Then he'd spend his final years resting, knowing he'd served with honor and distinction. But that was years away. Tonight, Max was 7 years old, in his prime, with many more years of service ahead. Tonight, he'd earned his rest. Sarah started the patrol car and drove home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, she and Max had earned their peace, knowing that somewhere in the city, a little girl with yellow ribbons in her hair was sleeping safely, her life saved by a German shepherd's extraordinary nose and unwavering dedication to duty. The Medal of Valor hung on Max's collar, catching the streetlights as they drove. But Sarah knew the real medal was the one hanging in a child's bedroom, the one that showed a little girl and her hero, together in a moment that would last forever. Max slept in the back seat, his work done, his purpose fulfilled. And Sarah drove through the city streets, grateful beyond words for the partner beside her, the dog who'd proven once again that sometimes the greatest heroes walked on 4 legs and spoke no words. They just acted. They just served. They just protected. The Medal of Valor would be presented at City Hall. The mayor would give a speech. Photographers would take pictures. But the real recognition had already happened in a grocery store aisle when a little girl hugged a police dog and whispered, "Thank you for saving me." That moment, Sarah knew, was what mattered most. Not the ceremonies, or the press conferences, or the commendations. Just the quiet knowledge that Max had used his extraordinary gifts, his 225 million scent receptors, and his unwavering dedication to protect an innocent child from harm. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new calls, new opportunities for Max to serve. But tonight, driving through streets lit by street lamps and neon signs, Sarah allowed herself to feel proud. Proud of Max. Proud of the work they did together. Proud to be his partner. And they changed lives.